Today on Conversations Aloud, we're discussing why do countries in the Middle East have a problem with the West and especially the US. We hear chants of death to America in Iran. What is the basis on that? Why don't they say death to any other liberal democracy in the world? They don't chant death to Switzerland. They don't chant death to Canada. Specifically say death to the USA and, death to Israel also. Now, what I learned moving to the West is that the governments in the West, say, where I am in the UK, how they treat their people is very, very, very different to how they portray power and impact other people around the world. It's almost like there's a democracy within the country, but there's an imperial kind of stance and force around the globe. Let me explain what I mean by that. When you look at Iran, they have a huge problem with the US. Why? Well, for a number of reasons. Number one, they overthrew the democratically elected government in Iran to install the Shah. So there was a democracy in Iran, they elected a government, and the CIA overthrew that democracy to install a monarchy in Iran who used torture and intimidation to control the people. They were living a very, very rich life, the monarchy, and people were suffering. And whoever didn't agree with the monarchy was tortured or killed. This was carried out by SAVAK, which was the kind of undercover police organization in Iran. And this was supported by the US. And after they overthrew the Shah and the Islamic regime came in 1979, they supported Saddam to attack Iran. Not only did they support Saddam, which was an 8-year war between Iran and Iraq that was absolutely devastating. Millions died. It was a horrible war. Not only did they support Saddam, the dictator, they actually helped give him chemical weapons to use against the Iranians, and also which he used against the Kurds. Saddam was using chemical weapons against the Iranians that was facilitated by the West, by the US. Now, if you're Iranian, what do you think about that? How do you feel about the West when they helped your enemy get chemical weapons to attack you with gas that kills a lot of people in a large area instantly, and which he used actually against his own people and the Kurds? A famous attack was Halabja, which he gassed the whole town. Like kids, women, men, everyone died. Then the West put sanctions on Iran. Even though Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon, they still put sanctions, and Iran was meeting all the conditions for the inspectors, for their nuclear civilian use of the nuclear capabilities that they have, which is all legal and all part of the non-proliferation agreement. And they still put sanctions on them, try to damage their economy. And they kept on saying, we're going to attack Iran. We're going to attack Iran. First it was Afghanistan, then Iraq, then Iran. So not only was America, okay, they're not saying death to Iran, but they're literally saying, we're going to attack you. Iran is next. They attacked Afghanistan, which is Iran's neighbor, on the right. And then they attacked Iraq, which is Iran's neighbor, on the left. And it was Iran was looking there and was like, wow, this is a huge threat for the US. Now, obviously, Iran has a lot of issues and problems that the people themselves are working towards changing. And every country, every culture has issues that need work. We're here in the UK. There's a lot of issues over here where people are dying because of them, that we don't see those numbers in any other country. So for sure, there's a lot of things that Iran is working on, and they should be working on, and the people are trying to make those changes. But that's different to trying to attack the country and do a regime change. I mean, think about the Iranians now, how they think. They were trying to negotiate with the US in June, with Trump's administration. And while they're negotiating with Trump approved Israel to kill the lead negotiator who's negotiating with the US. This is mafia stuff, We're negotiating with you and then we kill you. And then they killed scientists, and they killed their families, and they killed not just the scientists in Iran. They killed their wife and children and their neighbors. And at times they killed the whole building. They destroyed the whole building where the scientists were living. There's 600 civilians that died from that 12-day Israel-Iran war. An attack that was not started by Iran, right? Israel started that attack. Now, a lot of people will say, but Iran supports these proxies like Hezbollah and Hamas. The US and the West do 10 times worse than that. The US supported the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, which became Al-Qaeda. They trained them, gave them weapons to fight the Russians. They supported Saddam, gave him chemical weapons, a dictator, gave him chemical weapons to attack his enemies, which included his people. They trained and supported and facilitated weapons to go to extremist factions in Syria, which later became ISIS. Now, all those things backfired, of course, to the US. But short-term gains, long-term blowback, right? ISIS, that's who America supported. Factions, extremist factions that later became ISIS. They had a war in Iraq that had no legal basis. Why were they invading Iraq for those weapons of mass destruction? And I love when people say, yeah, Iraq was a mistake. No. A mistake is, you're on the highway and you're supposed to exit and you don't exit. A mistake is, you're supposed to answer A in the exam question and you answered B. That's a mistake. Invading another country and resulting in more than 500,000 deaths and the destruction of a country, which ended up having a civil war. And then ISIS came out of that. Isn't just, you downsize it to one word, a mistake. It's a catastrophe. It's a massacre. It's disgusting what was allowed to happen. And those that led the charge to invade invade Iraq on no basis, on lies, and they knew it was lies, should be charged. We can't just say, oh yeah, they made a mistake. Oh, oopsie, mistake, 500,000 people dead. Mistake, what can you do? This is why a lot of people in the East look at the West very differently. Because all around them is death and destruction by who the US supported. The people that really suffered from Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Saddam are the people themselves there. That are living under those conditions that allowed those groups to become a lot stronger than they would have if the US didn't support them. And of course, there's dozens of dictators that the US and the Western world supported when it met their goals and objectives, in spite of those objectives killing hundreds of thousands of the people on the ground. Because what they will say later is it's just a mistake. Oh, oopsie, sorry, yeah, mistake. Imagine telling some Iraqi family that had their family destroyed, their sons killed, the grandparents killed. Oh yeah, it was a mistake. We've learned that lesson. Well, you haven't, because the US and the Western world keeps on carrying out those attacks. That's why I don't buy when Westerners say Iran's bad because it supports these proxies. It's like, that's what the West does, literally. And it does it 10 times more than Iran, right? If you want regime change in Iran because of those things, then do you want regime change in the West and the US because of those things that they do, that Iran does, but the US does 10 times more? Right? And of course, I don't support any support of those proxies, whether by Iran or by the West. But it does happen. And the hypocrisy is what kills us a lot of the times. Now, I love living in the West. Don't get me wrong. I understand the values. I basically share both worlds. I come from the East and I've lived in the West for a long time. And so I can get the culture and values that I like from the West and the culture and values that I like from the East and combine them. And it's a perfect place for me to live. And I love it. And I love the people over here. But the problem that a lot of countries have in the East is not with the people over here who have no say. The people over here in the UK, for example, had no say about the war in Iraq. They came out in the million, in the hundreds of thousands, was up to a million actually, on the streets saying no war. And the government said, nope, even though we're a democracy, we're not going to listen to the people. We're just going to follow whoever wants us to take that route, right? This is the problem that the East has. It's not with the people, it's with the governments. that are carrying out those activities. Like, if you speak to people over here, do they know that the U.S. overthrew a democracy in Iran to install pretty much a dictatorship, a monarchy dictatorship in Iran, or that they supported Al-Qaeda, or they supported the Contras in Nicaragua, who are butchering their people? They supported dozens of dictators around the world that met the Western agenda. And that's the mismatch that people don't understand, because in the West, over here, it's a democracy. It's a liberal place, freedom of speech, freedom to be who you are, who you want to be. But those same governments have a different treatment in other places. A lot of times they don't support democracies. Depends how it aligns with their interests, right? Even though it might kill 100,000 people on the ground, what's our interest? A lot of times, that is the case, especially when it comes to the US. Unfortunately, this is what we've seen in Iraq, right? In Iran, what they've done, right? So people are always like scared. Oh my God, they're saying death to America. I mean, I wish they didn't say that stuff. But if you're Iranian, would you like America after what it has done to your country? Even though Iran hasn't done anywhere near that to the US, if any at all. Would you say love to America? Even when you're trying to negotiate? By the way, people don't understand that Iran really wants to have a better relationship with the West. They're really trying. So they're trying so much that they made pretty much all the concessions required by the West, right? To give up anything that is above the required for nuclear, right? And allow inspectors, including the US inspectors, to come in and check everything. And when they got into that agreement in 2016, before 2016 under Obama, in 2012 to 16, they were meeting all the conditions until Trump came and canceled that agreement regarding their nuclear. And then Iran said, okay, well, if you cancel that, we can just build up our nuclear percentages. But they always met the conditions. And they tried to connect with the West, align with the West so much that even when they got into an agreement with Russia, Iran said, I don't want a defense pact with you. Even though Russia offered that, let's do a defense pact instead of just an economic one. Iran was like, no. And then, a lot of analysts believe that the main reason for that is that it will be seen as negative from the West side, and therefore it might cause issues with building that relationship if Iran had a defense pact with Russia, which the West obviously sees as an enemy. But now that's gone. How could Iran trust the West after what they've done? They sat down on the negotiating table with the US and they allowed the lead negotiator to be killed while they're negotiating. And then they were like, okay, we're not going to negotiate with the US. We're going to negotiate with the Europeans. And while they're negotiating with the Europeans, the US bombed their facilities while they're negotiating with the Europeans. So diplomacy, international order, the West, that's all broken now. And so the US is pushing Iran to be more in the BRICS, to be more with China and Russia. And now Iran is definitely saying, what's the point of even trying to be with the West, build a better relationship with the West, because you can't trust it. We've had 60 years of experience with the West where they kept on attacking us, actually removed our democracy. The democratic countries in the West removed the democracy, the democratically elected government in Iran, and installed the Shah, which was a monarchy dictatorship, who tortured his people and killed his people to control the population. Now, I'm not saying that the Iranian government is great and amazing and everything. They have a lot of drawbacks. It's very obvious they have a lot of drawbacks. The people know the drawbacks. But all the West is doing right now is giving more support for the government. Because when when a foreign entity attacks your country, you'll unite and support your government against the foreign entity. Unless you really, really don't like your government, which is what happened in Iraq, for example. But that didn't happen in Iran. We didn't see the same thing. People always say that Iran is this fanatical death cult. They don't care about living. They just want to kill. Well, the whole 12-day war showed us the true face of Iran. When America bombed their facilities, if they were fanatical, if they were a death cult who didn't care about their population at all, they would have really attacked the US. Instead of just making a ceremonial kind of retaliation, telling the US, calling Trump and saying, hey, we're going to attack here, is 1 p.m. okay? Remove all your assets so that no US citizens are harmed. That's what Iran did, because they didn't want to get into a war with the US, right? That's very logical, not very death cult fanatical, right? And with Israel, they had the capability all this time to bomb Israel directly, but they didn't, right? Only when Israel bombed them did they retaliate, and they kept on saying, if you stop Israel, we'll stop. That's very logical, not very death cult kind of mentality. It seems like they care about their people. I'm not saying they don't, there's no torture and things like that in Iran. Iran seems like they wanted to stop the war to save their people. So they're trying to trick a lot of people to say that all of Iran is evil, that Iran is not logical, doesn't want to negotiate, doesn't want to kind of amend the relationship with the West, when it's all the opposite. They try to do all those things, and the West, and everyone now sees it. People in the West see that Iran is actually the grown-up in what happened in the past month. They didn't lash out as people thought. And I think people in the West for the first time are seeing not how their governments are with them, which in a lot of instances is beautiful and great, but how their governments act when it comes to other places in the world. It's like there's a different face that shows up that has no regards to democracy and all those things. They don't care whether you're a dictator or a democracy. Are you aligned to our interests? Which has resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths in Syria, in Iraq, Afghanistan, of course, Iran now. And this is why the BRICS is the future. The BRICS nation of Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa, and Iran is a major part of that. They see how the West doesn't want to negotiate on a lot of things. They see that the US is falling apart. The US dollar is crashing. The US attacked everyone with their tariffs. It's not focused on global economics. The US is now very focused on putting sanctions on pretty much sanctions on other people. Either you play by our rules, which will harm you, or we're going to sanction you. That's the US strategy, right? US strategy is having hundreds of bases all around the world. The US strategy is supporting a lot of organizations that really end up killing their people as long as it aligns with US interests. So of course, other nations are looking at this and saying, we want a different order. We want a different world where actually diplomacy works, where we're focused on economic growth instead of bullying, where we don't want to push each other towards a nuclear war, which a lot of actions that the West is taking is kind of pushing us to that world. And Russia and China are not going to let Iran fall. Iran has huge amounts of oil and gas that China really needs. I mean, most of the oil that China gets is from Iran. And the issue is that Iranians feel like America is constantly attacking them by putting sanctions. It's really demolished the economy, even though Iran's been playing by the rules. It's met all the requirements of the non-proliferation agreement of their nuclear. They did even reaching 60%, by the way, enrichment is still within the non-proliferation agreement. So they didn't actually break that agreement. But in spite of that, there's still sanctions and there's still bullying. And so people want to create a different organization that's not led by the US, that is not unipolar, like one leader kind of leading, which being the US, but is a multipolar world where everyone comes together, where countries don't interfere in each other's own business, but they're focused more on economic growth. Because, for the Iranians, they know that the US is going to support these small factions and arm them in Iran, which will lead to a civil war. Right. And the US has done that for decades and decades and decades. That's the strategy that it uses. Even if it leads to a civil war, even if it leads to hundreds of thousands of deaths, right? It doesn't matter for the US, as we've seen in Iraq and even in Vietnam, starting from there. That's what they were doing. And that's why you're going to see the BRICS really skyrocket in terms of power and growth and alignment. And the US is kind of, as you can see what's happening in the US internally, let alone externally. I mean, the sentiment towards the U.S. has really changed, especially after, Trump coming in and putting tariffs on everyone, and it's impacting everyone. And you can see the bullying that's happening. You can see the distrust that's happening when you're negotiating with the U.S. and suddenly the U.S. allows the killing of the people that you're negotiating with. It's just kind of like, why do we get into an agreement with the U.S. if they can just kill us, if they can just ignore diplomacy, ignore international law? We could get into an agreement today and tomorrow they can change their mind, which Trump has done numerous times. So do the agreements with the US mean anything? Are we just kind of writing something and then when Trump changes his mind, which he often does, that agreement is canceled, which is against the rules, international law, but it doesn't matter. That's the problem for a lot of countries. We'd love to hear how maybe you've changed how you think about the West, how they act in the East, in the Middle East especially, versus how the West is with their citizens. It's very different. Like night and day in some instances. Night and day. Thanks for watching. If you did like this video, do hit the like and subscribe button. Have a great day.